Hi Divines, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alyssa. I'm an empowerment coach who specializes in trauma and twin flame detachment. Today we're going to be talking about something that I feel coincides perfectly with the fact that it is the new year. Today's topic is about how to live your best life in separation. Typically we make New Year's resolutions and they don't last longer than maybe like 3 days or 3 weeks. What I'm going to talk about today, making resolutions in your life, making changes in your life, but making them stick permanently. Now, in order to make these things stick permanently, it's about a lot more than today's video. It's about actually doing 3 different stages. And today is going to be mostly about stage 2. If we want to talk about stage 1 briefly, that is the healing work. If you want to know more about the healing work that I've done personally, I actually have a healing work playlist that you can go watch those videos, and I will be adding to that section as we go. Also on my website, breakingloveopen.com, there is a pinned post under the blogs called Intensive Trauma Work. And you can go ahead and read that to get an idea of different kinds of trauma work that you can do on yourself. Also in my book, The Twin Flame Journey, I dedicated the entire chapter number 4, 40 pages, to how to do healing work and different kinds of aspects of healing work that you could choose from. All right, so let's get into the second stage. And this was completely channeled by my spirit team. They have great divine timing, like I said, coinciding with the new year. So instead of you just setting some resolutions and failing with them, let's go ahead and talk about how to keep those things permanent and how to thrive in separation while we're at it. Now, I'm going to ask you all a question, and I know that this is going to be a little challenging for some of you. What I want you to do is hear the question, pause the video, close your eyes, and process it. In fact, even better, I want you to go ahead and get ready to pause the video right now, have your hand ready to go, and then close your eyes at this moment and hear this question. Okay, so the question is, what would you do with your life if your twin flame counterpart were to pass away tomorrow? I want you to go ahead and take 5 minutes or 30 minutes or however long you need. I want you to either vision or write it down. I know that you would grieve them. That is not a part of this. I'm talking about your life after the grieving is done. Okay, go ahead and pause the video. Okay, are you back? All right, that was pretty tough, right? When my spirit team had me do this, I was not a happy camper at all. In fact, I think that I resisted it maybe for 24 hours before they came back and pressed on me to do it again. By the way, doing this exercise is a huge step in your growth. A lot of what we're supposed to do in life in order to connect with our soul and do this inner work is we have to spend time by ourselves in solitude, getting to know ourselves. As Taylor Swift says, you're on your own, kid. You always have been. And separation, I feel like for twin flames, because we can't just move on to another relationship, is our opportunity to tackle all of these things and get to know ourselves completely. So on your list, and I invite you all to share completely in the comments below what was on your list. I am really interested to hear what would come up for you, how dramatically your life might change, the small things that you would change and the big things that you would change. Maybe there's a trip that you have been dying to take. Maybe there's a meditation retreat that you wanted to go to in Tulum or Bali. Maybe there's a new class that you wanted to take, like a Pilates class or a hot yoga class or an art class. Maybe you wanted to write your own book, or there's been a book on your list forever that you've wanted to read and you just haven't gotten around to it. Maybe you want to make every Sunday a full spa self-care day. Maybe it was that you want to spend more time playing with your kids or your cat or your dog to get closer to them and spend more activity time with them. Maybe it was something as dramatic as that you want to buy a new car, or that you want to buy a house, or that you want to move to a new house, move across town, move to a different state as I did, or even move to a different country. I'm sure there are a million things that you guys came up with that I can't even think of. There is so much to do in this life. Sometimes I feel like some of us are just stuck in this little box and we don't even see how big and beautiful the world is and how many things that there are to explore. Now, I do want to preface that doing these exercises without doing the healing work, without doing meditation, without doing the shadow work, without talking to your spirit team, without getting to know your intuition, this exercise probably won't matter much. But doing all of these things together in conjunction with finding yourself, this is going to make a world of difference and potentially take you from a life where you're only happy 5% of the time and constantly thinking about separation or your twin flame to now being happy 75% of the time and only thinking about your twin flame 5% of the time. So what we're trying to do is flip those tables around so that this all works better for you. Now let me start off with a question, because another thing that you might want to explore with your spirit team or doing some inner work is why you haven't already done these things. Like, what is holding you back? Is there still some codependency going on between you and your twin flame? Is there part of you that hasn't stepped into your divine feminine where you're supposed to receive and let them pursue you instead of you chasing after them? What could possibly be holding you back in life from going this next step? Because that might be something that you need to explore as part of your shadow work and tackle that as well. So my friends, what we are actually talking about is a lot like if you watch the movie Eat, Pray, Love, what Julia Roberts' character did in that movie. Now, you don't have to do something as dramatic as she did, taking a whole year off and going to Italy and India and Bali, but we are talking about taking small steps towards restructuring your life. And that's exactly what she did in that movie. She noticed some very unhealthy patterns that she had. In fact, she admitted in the beginning of the movie that she was basically taking one man and she was losing herself with him completely. But she noticed when she divorced her husband and was with the next guy that this was just a repeating unhealthy pattern that she had. So she knew, she felt a calling to get away for a year and go to these places and explore and connect with herself. What I find interesting in this movie, and this is why I recommend to not talk to any of your friends or family about this, is her friend tried to discourage her from doing any of this. She was like, oh, I know the beaches in Bali are nice, but like, she didn't understand on any level, and a lot of people won't understand on any level why you're going to do the things that are on your list. And, you know, these people probably live in a box and don't want to change themselves. Don't let that affect you. Now, like I said, you don't have to go into this full-blown and make big changes right off the bat. Start with something small, something that can fit in your budget range and something that is not overly dramatic. And I will tell you the reason about that why later in this video. Now we're going to get to the actual purpose of why to do this. I want you to think back to a time when you were with your twin flame, when things were going really well and they brought up a light in you. You may have also been feeling some oxytocin and dopamine, but do you know the light? Go back, and if you need to pause this video again, that's fine, but go back and think of a time that you really felt just like everything around you was lit up because of some experience that you were having with your twin flame. I have news for you. That is actually, and always has been, your light. And when you start doing these things, you're going to start to see that light come up without anyone else being around, without your twin flame being around. Now you may say, well, Alyssa, how come I didn't feel that as my own light growing up? Divines, let me tell you that there are a lot of us that when we're grown up are taught to dim our own light. That you were taught and shown that you aren't divine, that you aren't anything special, that Maybe it was your parents that are special, or another golden child in your family. If you're a twin flame or a spiritual person, you probably were a black sheep anyways. And so a lot of your light was actually just dimmed, or you were told to be quiet, or you were told to shove that all away. Maybe if you had a childhood like me, you didn't get to do a lot of the things that you actually wanted to do. And this is because you're taught growing up that you're not the divine being that you actually are. If that was the case in your childhood, then you, in your neural pathways, in your subconscious, you've been taught to only light up when others give you permission to do so, or when others are around and you're doing something that they enjoy, that makes them happy. So maybe you only light your light up around other people because now you have come to believe that they're the ones lighting it for you rather than you lighting it for yourself. Are you all grasping what I'm trying to say? That you've come to see that only somebody in the external, only something in the external can light that light for you instead of you doing it on your own. Believe it or not, this is actually part of what keeps you addicted to your twin flame and keeps you in obsessive thoughts that just aren't healthy. If you do things that light you up inside, then you'll start to connect with your soul. And you know that elusive self-love that everyone's always talking about? Well, that will start to come naturally now. You'll start to feel more abundant, you'll start to detach from your twin flame, and you'll start to release any codependency. By the way, it is completely vital to do these things on your own. If you are already right now texting a friend and saying, hey, want to go do Pilates class with me? It's not going to be the same. You won't see your inner light. It'll still be you in connection with another person. It'll still be the external. It'll still be only if they want to do it with you. Doing things on your own, traveling the world by yourself, going to class by yourself, going to dinner by yourself is part of your actual growth work. So if you're planning on doing all of this stuff with a friend, you won't see your inner light and none of this will work. Now let me step back for a minute and talk about mind, body, and ego and why New Year's resolutions typically don't work. I was talking earlier about neural pathways and the subconscious. If you're not familiar with this, I'm going to give a quick synopsis of the parts of the brain and how they work. The prefrontal cortex, our conscious brain. So if you've heard people talk about in spirituality when you're awake, when you're conscious, you're using this prefrontal cortex part of your brain. The subconscious in the back is where everything you learn in the conscious is stored. I'm going to give you an example on how we use this from day to day. When you are learning to drive for the very first time, you are using your prefrontal cortex. So you may have noticed that the first time you drove a car, you were pretty exhausted after you went out and did it, because using the conscious part of your brain is exhausting. It uses a lot of glucose, and that's why we can't use it all the time, because we would just be constantly worn out. That's why the subconscious is at play. So the first time you went out and drove a car, the first 3 times that you went out and drove a car, you were learning, you were using your conscious brain, and that was all getting moved and stored to the subconscious. So have you ever driven home from work or from the store and you're like, wow, I don't really know how I got here. Wow, I don't really remember making that turn. That was because you were using your subconscious. So after your first, 1 to 10 trips out on the road, you're going to start using your subconscious brain a lot more so that you're not exhausted, so that you can get through your day and do all the things that you need to do. Same thing when you're learning a job. It's really tough in the beginning, but then you get there after a couple of months and you know how to do everything. You just go by pattern, you just go by clockwork. Well, those are the neural pathways that are set. It's the same thing. Like if you have on your list to start working out and this has been a challenge for you for 5 years, it's because this isn't part of your neural pathways that are set. As you're going through these changes, you're going to be dealing with 3 different things, and let me explain how those things interact with each other. So we just talked a little bit about the mind, but the body and the mind actually play together, and they play together as kind of your resistance team. Whenever you're having resistance to something, there is a lot of your mind and body at play here. Let's say that you did have a new workout program on your list, and let's say that they don't fight you for like maybe the first 2 sessions, right? Because you're all motivated and ready to go, and maybe there's some adrenaline that you've got going, some excitement that you've got around going to this new program. But maybe on the second day or the third day or the fourth day, you get ready to go after work to this new exercise program, and all of a sudden your body starts feeling really tired, and maybe you skip a day, and then the next day you plan to go, the same thing happens again. Your body feels really tired, or maybe even some kind of symptom comes up. Believe it or not, that is your body fighting the change. The body and the mind have been taught that they are there to keep you in survival mode, and to them, change is bad. I will have some book recommendations coming up in a future video in the next few weeks. If you want to check that out, I will explain some books that will help you tackle that. The third aspect kind of works all on its own, and that is our friend the ego. Now, some of you may have heard that we have to have our ego die. It's not actually like that. We don't ever really go through an ego death. The mind isn't going anywhere, the body isn't going anywhere, and the ego is not going anywhere either. What happens more with the ego is that you are retraining it or telling it to sit down. Actually, with all three of these, the mind, body, and the ego, you're going to tell them all to sit down. You're going to retrain them through the neural pathways and help them see that it is okay that these changes are being made. The ego is the one that needs to be able to see, right? It only believes in something if it can actually see it. Like everything that you're seeing through your third eye, like if you're seeing a future with your twin flame through your third eye, your ego is not going to believe it because it can't see it with these eyes, because it can't feel it, it can't touch it, it can't sense it. So sometimes making these changes in your life are tough. Well, actually, they're always tough for the ego, because the ego is going to want to see the result. But if you're making not just a small change in your life, well, a lot of these changes that you have on your list, you actually have to plan them out, right? Like, let's say if you're going skydiving, you're probably going to plan that like 2 or 3 weeks from now, so the ego is trying to bring fear into play in those 2 to 3 weeks to try to get you to not go to do it, and maybe even make you feel like not so good about it to try to stop you from doing it. A lot of times in the past, when the ego has gotten in the way, we've been like, oh, maybe I'm not making the right decision about something, and then you start doubting yourself. And actually, once you through the event and you jump off that plane and the ego sees, oh, I got to the ground and I survived. Oh, okay, that was okay. That's how it is with the ego. You have to help it see. The tough part is only that span of time between, when you've decided you want to do something and when you can actually put it into play and show that you didn't die doing this event. You didn't, lose all your money doing this event. And then the ego can see that it's all okay. But the best way to tell your ego to sit down is to tell it when you're in that span of planning, of making a change in your life. Allow the ego to express what it wants to express. Allow the feelings to come up and say, yeah, okay, I do hear you, but it doesn't really matter, and your concerns, your fears are actually an illusion. They're not real. The thing with the ego too is that you may even enter into a dark night of the soul with this whole thing. If there's some kind of major change that you are making in your life and the mind and the body and the ego are not okay with it, you might enter into a dark night of the soul, especially if you try to do these things during eclipse and retrograde season. Don't ask me why, and I don't know if this happens for everybody, but personally in my life, my major changes seem to come up around those seasons, and so it makes it even harder to move forward with plans. It's just, it almost feels like you're just sinking down into a little bit of a depressive state. You start doubting it, you start fearing it, and it just kind of takes over emotionally. Just be patient with yourself through those steps. Take care of do a lot of extra self-care. If you need to rest, certainly go ahead and rest. Be gentle with yourself. Have grace with yourself when you're changing your life. This is kind of what Abraham Hicks talks about in in their teachings. If you've listened to Abraham Hicks ever, you'll hear them talking about how to put the extra energy into the train that you want to put in motion. Doing the things that you want to do in your life certainly helps that train go in motion. So let me give you an example of what they're talking about, of the train that you want to put in motion and the train that you don't want to put in motion. Let's say that you wake up and you have something planned to do on your list and you actually move forward with it. Maybe it's that you grabbed a canvas from Michaels and you pulled up a YouTube class on how to paint a canvas. You're going to follow along with the YouTube, so you get all these beautiful paints out, you get to feel creative for the day, you're getting closer to your soul, you're feeling happy, and then when you get to the end of that canvas artwork YouTube class, you get to look at the product of what you did and you're feeling really good about it, right? That's putting the extra emotion into that train. Now let's look at this day very differently. Let's say that you instead wake up and you pull up your twin flame on Instagram and you see something that you don't want to see. And now you're like, oh, I don't really want to do what I had on my list because now I'm really feeling like shit about everything. You instead, maybe you stay on their Instagram for a while and it just pulls you down into low vibration and then you don't feel like getting out of bed the rest of the day. Like what train have you now given energy to? See, and this makes a big difference, just a day at a time. Just a day at a time, because I know change is hard. But it makes a difference for the rest of your life. Now, I know that there is probably at least one person, probably more, that did not pause the video at the beginning of this, didn't write anything down, and was like, oh, Alyssa, I don't want to do this. I don't want to imagine that my twin flame passed away, because they're only focused on union. They literally just want to focus on only union. Kitty just woke up. Say a quick little hi. She likes Colorado so much better. Well, my team gave me a download for you as well. How my spirit team told me to think of your twin flame or union is like looking at the sun. So, you know, looking at the sun too long is going to hurt our eyes, right? Point being, looking at the sun, you're only going to hurt yourself. This is how the universe wants us to see our twin flame. Looking at them too directly, like in the example that I gave earlier about waking up that day and looking directly at their Instagram and seeing something that you didn't want to see, that's looking at them too directly. See, the sun rises and sets without you even doing anything. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that you don't even know about. And that sun is going to rise even if it is behind the clouds. See, if the universe is working to bring you back into union, like I said, and the ego wants to see it with the eyes, right? It wants to see it happening. That is all just purely ego. If the universe is doing something behind the scenes to bring you back into union, it's going to happen just like the sun is going to rise. There's not anything that you have to do to control it or try to make it happen or to force it or to get with this specific coach because they got back into union and you have some kind of illusion that they can give you the secret path, like all of these journeys are the same. Believe you me, they're not. We all have different lessons to learn. We all have a different kind of divine timing. In case that didn't make sense, let me try to explain this without the metaphor. Let me actually go back to the example we just talked about where you pull up your twin flame on Instagram and it starts to ruin your day. So this actually takes your energy away from you in 3 ways. You are now in a feeling of lack rather than abundance. So any of the manifestations that you're asking for are not going to be moving on that train forward with your manifestations coming into fruition. Also, if a union is on that list of manifestation, it's going to hurt that as well. Number 2, you also just gave your twin flame a hit of energy and not the good kind. It's the kind of energy that they can feel that's the chasing energy that actually keeps them running from you. And number 3, now you're in the wrong energy. The masculine energy is the pursuing energy. So you actually want to be working to stay in your divine feminine energy, in your receiving energy. Listen, for anyone who may still not be getting it, let me ask this. Would you want your divine masculine returning to you, seeing you as the divine fucking goddess that you are? Or would you want them to return to you seeing a sad individual who is literally just been pining away and waiting for them. Because that's not something that's going to give the right polarity to bring you back into a union that stays permanent. This will just, if you're just that sad individual, it's just gonna make them run again. Okay, and finally, for anybody, I know most of you are getting it now, but if there is still one doubter out there who's saying, yeah, but why should I do this work because my divine masculine is not doing the work? Let me ask you this one question about that. If your divine masculine isn't doing the work, they're in low vibration. They're sticking with their coping mechanisms to get through life. They're not proceeding forward with their dreams. They're not talking to their spirit team. They're not forming a healthy relationship with their mind, body, and their ego. Do you want to stay there with them? What purpose would that serve you? What purpose would that serve your life to stay down there with you? And even if you're waiting for union, what purpose is that going to serve your union? All of these things that we talk about, all these stages of growth, get you towards union with yourself. And let's even take all the spiritual talk out of it. It just gets you ready for a healthy relationship so that you don't, spend 12 years with someone and get divorced, so you can have good communication, so that you're not attracted to someone who's going to betray you in the end. Divines, I literally give away everything that I have learned on my journey and everything that I know in these YouTube videos for free. If you need more support, however, you can click on the link below this video. It will take you to a link that has my book, that has a way to schedule an appointment with me. And if you can't afford the rate to talk to me for 90 minutes, that's okay. There is another link below that where it's titled Q&A. And just for $22, you can click that link and you can send me an email at breakingloveopen@gmail.com. And you can ask me anything that's going on with your journey, and I will reply with a long response within 48 hours to answer your question. All right, that's it for today, Divines. Again, I hope everyone has a happy new year, and I'll see you in the next video.